So I watched the new season of Love on the Spectrum US, and I think I might have been wrong. Season 3 came out recently, and after watching all of it and then rewatching the video I made a year ago, in which my voice was very croaky.
Some autistic people find it infantilizing.
I've changed my mind on a few things, maybe, kind of. A bit. Love on the Spectrum tends to elicit mixed opinions from the autistic community. In fact, I did a poll on the community tab and most of you said mixed feelings. Only 6% said you love it, which, considering I have an audience made up of mostly autistic people and this show is about autistic people, not great, not great. If you didn't know, Love on the Spectrum follows autistic people as they date, many of them for the first time. The creators do the matchmaking themselves, film the dates, follow the developing relationships as the seasons progress. It's quieter and slower than your typical dating show. No studios, it's all shot documentary style. Some say it's exploitative, some say it's a great opportunity, some say it's infantilizing, some say it's inspiring, some say a number of the participants' parents are perhaps not as wholesome as they appear on the show, particularly when you consider what they've been reposting on social media and on whose podcasts they appear. But we'll get into the surrounding mess later on. First of all, let's focus solely on the show. Is it a net positive or negative when it comes to autistic representation in the year 2025? A year in which the autistic community needs as much support as it can get. We're going to dissect it in 5 parts. Part 1, a fair exchange of value versus exploitation. Before we get into all of that, we have the most perfect sponsor for today's video, the Paired app. So Lewis and I have actually been using the Paired app for over a year now, and it's genuinely so incredibly fun. It's basically a relationship care app. You use it with your partner to help prompt meaningful conversations. You can play games, which is great. If you're competitive, you can go on journeys together, such as rekindle the honeymoon phase, create a relationship timeline for all your important memories. Lewis and I have been together for 10 years now, and I'd say we've probably always had pretty great communication. I can be quite direct, and that can be helpful sometimes. But I know even I would be shy to ask or answer some of the questions on the Paired app, especially some of the spicier ones, to his face. Being able to type it makes it so much easier, and it brings up so many topics of conversation that we never would have discussed otherwise. For example, some of the questions. What's one healthy boundary you could set around phones to give you more time in the evening? I get to tell Lewis off with that one because he's constantly glued to his phone. If you were describing Lewis's 3 best qualities to a stranger, which would you choose? First of all, I'd say he's super optimistic. He's just always really emotionally level. He's just happy. He's extremely kind. He's just such a kind, warm person who would never judge anybody, which is perfect for someone like me who's been judged many times in my life. Very, very funny. He's always made me laugh. Let's see how long it takes Lewis to respond. It's come through. Ambitious, supportive, and benevolent, which is a word I had to look up. Benevolent. Meg the Benevolent. There we go. See, it always makes me laugh. The Paired app encourages us to talk more and to remember that we are actually in a relationship. We're not just 2 people who happen to be doing chores under the same roof. I genuinely recommend the Paired app. I think it's wonderful. It's also super LGBT plus friendly as well. Click my link below to get a 7-day free trial and 25% off Paired Premium so you can maintain and deepen your connection with your partner. And speaking of cultivating meaningful relationships, let's get back to Love on the Spectrum. Was Australian comedian Jim Jeffries actually kind of right when he jokingly referred to the cast members as the people you exploited?
Contestants is a bad word.
The subjects.
The people you exploited. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No. How did you find them?
We call them participants.
Well, yeah, I mean, the cast of Love on the Spectrum are still not paid for their involvement. That has not changed. The argument has always been, this is a documentary, it's not a reality TV show. And while reality TV participants are often paid, documentary subjects are usually not. Except, what did Love on the Spectrum win Emmys for? Outstanding casting for a doc? No, wait. What does that say? Outstanding casting for a reality program. Outstanding directing for a reality program. Outstanding picture editing for an unstructured reality program. And just outstanding unstructured reality program. I'm getting the sense that it might be a reality program. Unstructured reality TV show is probably the right phrasing. It's not scripted, but it is more for entertainment than education, and they do sometimes ask the cast to repeat what they've said or done if they didn't like the first take.
The only time I remember being directed was if they missed a shot and then they'd ask me to repeat what I just did like over again.
The show started in Australia as a small project. Maybe they didn't have the money to pay at that point. Now it's in Netflix top 10 most watched, and we're just carrying on the the way we always have, still not paying. They cover the costs of the dates though, but I mean, a lot of the dates involve walking around public parks, but sometimes they'll fly you to Africa. I'll let you decide if that's enough, but personally, I think not paying for season 3 is less excusable than previous seasons because we now have several cast members returning season after season. People are coming back to the show not just to see any old autistic people going on dates, but for these specific couples, these specific personalities.
I'm tuning in to watch James. I'm tuning in to watch Abby and David. Yes, I love Madison and I love the new characters, but I'm tuning in to continue following their journeys, just like I would a reality TV cast member's journey. And I think anyone who's providing content year after year that people are consuming and enjoying should be getting paid for it.
They are now the product that Netflix is selling, or at least a very crucial piece of the puzzle. Excuse my language. We're doing Keeping Up with the Autistics, basically. Do you think the Kardashians are compensated in transportation costs? I think not. In my last Love on the Spectrum, I read out a quote from a cast member, Sabode's sister. She expressed how they really didn't care about the money. It was just all about finding love, finding a partner for them. But she recently commented on this TikTok actually agreeing with this person. You're right, the current cast bring a lot of value to Netflix and they deserve to be compensated for that. I completely agree. Love on the Spectrum has changed, so maybe it's time to update the compensation situation. However, one counter argument is that the cast members have actually benefited so much from being on the show that it's actually a fair exchange of value at this point. Good old exposure as payment, every creative person's dream. But it's clear that appearing on Love on the Spectrum is absolutely life-changing for most cast members. The main goal is obviously finding love, and honestly many of the matches on season 3 were incredible. I think director Kian was even surprised by how many success stories they had this time around. Obviously they don't always get it perfectly right, but you never get the impression that they're deliberately putting bad matches together in order to make things awkward or anything like that. There's no cast members who are included simply for the drama, which I think is one of the reasons why people call the show wholesome. And aside from that, you and maybe your newfound partner too might find fame, a social media career, opportunities, money. Abby recently performed her new song on the Kelly Clarkson show. She also runs a successful business, which is called Hats by Abby, and it seems like she's doing pretty well for herself.
Do you like being famous?
I do, because I want to make more money.
Also on the Kelly Clarkson show, Tanner met his favorite celebrity, Jack Black. It's changed James's life.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. He has just blossomed so much through this. It's just been like the best thing ever.
Harry is making money through social media opportunities and Cameo.
It's been helping. Oh my gosh, I've already been making, some good bucks from it.
And also feeling accepted for the first time, which is really nice.
But now it's like after the show, I'm getting the opposite. Like people are saying, we love your voice and love how she says her name and the accent or cadence. And people want me to do audiobooks and voiceovers and podcasts and they could listen to my voice for hours. It makes me kind of emotional because I never thought like people would just accept that part of me so much because they're being used to being told to be quiet or not being able to be independent. It's like, I'm finally free from my cage. It's like, I can fly now.
Connor was on Broadway, Kaylin's social media exploded, and she's written a book.
Has it opened new doors for you though? Has it changed things a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. They kind of told us a little bit that our social media would maybe get a little bit more attention, but they didn't prepare us to what degree that our social media platforms would really explode, and mine did.
And just confidence too. Abby and Connor's growth from their first appearance to now is pretty amazing.
Do you feel like now as an adult woman, do you feel like your dreams have come true?
Oh, yes. And I feel I can do a lot more things.
I love all of this for the autistic people involved. More financial stability for disabled people who may struggle with traditional employment is great. Even without direct payment, if you are willing to trade your awkward dating moments, I could never. And if you're one of the lucky few who are deemed interesting enough to make good television, then you will be rewarded. I think that's clear. Even the parents and siblings of cast members are launching podcasts and attempts at social media careers. For better or for worse, as I say, we'll get onto that a bit later in the video. Also, when we're considering whether the show is exploitative or not, we need to be careful not to do one of the things that Love on the Spectrum is criticized for all of the time, infantilizing the cast. There's one part of my previous Love on the Spectrum video that I don't think I agree with anymore. I know what I was trying to say, but I really wouldn't word it like that if I was making that video now. So I read a quote from this article.
Perhaps we should trust that the folks from Love on the Spectrum US knew what they were doing and were not, in fact, being taken advantage of. After all, wouldn't it be rather ableist of us to assume that was the case? Now, what do you think of that?
Then I go on to say that the cast should be paid. Go off, Meg.
I think it can both be true that the cast members saw enough benefit in taking part of the show that they were prepared to do it for free, but also that maybe being paid to do it would have been nice. It would have signaled to these autistic individuals and also to autistic people everywhere that we are valued. It would be the showrunner saying, you gave something to me and I'm gonna then give you this in return, because it's a huge risk putting your face out there for millions to see. Again, it is not a charity matchmaking service.
Then I say this.
I also don't feel like it's ableist to be a little bit more concerned about exploitation when it comes to autistic people. We are statistically more likely to be abused, more likely to face negative life outcomes, and more likely to face things like mate crime.
But it would be ableist to imply that the cast members have less agency than a non-autistic person. I agree with the article. We absolutely have to trust that the cast want to be there and they have given their informed consent. Elon Musk knew what he was doing here, and the cast knew what they were doing when they signed up, as much as any adult can know what they're getting into when they sign up for a reality TV show. Again, I would never.
Do autistic people belong on reality TV? Autistic people belong where everyone else does, which is ideally wherever we want.
What I think I was trying to say here is that autistic people may just be so happy to be included, so happy to have this representation and this opportunity to date in this way. Maybe we'd settle for not being paid in a way that neurotypical reality TV stars do not. But the cast members absolutely opted into being in the show, and they made the decision knowing up front that they would not be paid.
My mom thought that you could go up there, Connor. And I was like, me? No way. I was happy the way I was. But when I saw it a little more and thought about my brothers and sister and how they all found significant others, I got myself thinking, man, it sure looks like it would be nice. And the fame would have been a nice touch, but mainly I wanted to experience love, give the dating world a go.
Yeah, I saw the 2 seasons of the Australian version premiered before the American version ever started. So yes, of course, I watched both of those. And I remember when I was watching that show, I could absolutely relate to them. I knew how they felt. What I had been through, what they had been through. So I knew how they felt. So when I heard there was going to be an American version, I knew I could not miss the opportunity. I knew I had to audition for it.
Dani, for example, because she's a busy CEO and she didn't have time to find love on her own. She's got things to do. And if we frame Dani as a victim of the show, we risk undermining her agency. And the cast members seem to have nothing but positive things to say about Kian and the intentionally small Love on the Spectrum crew.
It was really important to us to just make sure that people knew that it was on their terms, not on ours. It's not about, hey, we've signed you up for a TV show and you have to do this.
Do you feel totally comfortable being yourself on camera, or
yes,
do you?
I am comfortable myself being on camera.
I love it.
And especially because they are a small group and the camera crew are very accommodating.
What was it overwhelming at times having cameramen and all that stuff?
I mean, I admit it did feel a little bit intrusive, but it wasn't too bad. But overall, it was absolutely a positive experience. I really enjoyed it.
Last year, Kaylin, who is a season 1 cast member, made a TikTok pointing out that many of the people attempting to defend the cast just end up infantilizing and talking over them.
I just want to offer you something to think about in case you come across someone who says Love on the Spectrum doesn't provide a dignified representation of autism. There's a lot of irony in the fact that none of these critics have asked the actual cast members how we felt about our portrayal. You can't hear us say that we enjoyed our time on the show and then turn around and claim that we were actually treated like children, we just didn't realize it. To talk over the entire cast, who've all said we felt it was positive for us, and claim we weren't treated with dignity seems sort of hypocritical. That line of thinking in itself is way more infantilizing than anything I encountered on the show.
I don't fully agree with what Kaylin says here, because while yes, the cast did have an amazing time and many of them are famous now, this show doesn't only affect the participants. Representation of autism in the media, especially on a show this successful, it affects the whole autistic community. It's lovely that Kian's most important thing is the cast. The cast members being happy with their edits and feeling respected.
To me, they're the most important critics of the show.
Yes.
Feeling like their stories have been told in a respectful and positive way is the most important thing for me.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that this show provides a dignified portrayal of autistic people in everyone's minds. Part 2. Wholesome versus Infantilizing. There were a couple of major things that I and many others criticised about previous seasons that are still present in season 3. Firstly, the music.
Brain. Oh dear. Yeah, but...
For the fumbling, baby giraffe, cartoonish, naughty woodland creature, there actually are quite a lot of close-up shots of woodland creatures throughout this season. Music, and usually this music is paired with a sickly sweet, simple voiceover.
Danny and Adon are celebrating their 1-year anniversary.
None of it would be out of place in a documentary about children, which this is not. And that could be seen as infantilization, as a microaggression. We're subtly undermining the cast members and therefore autistic people in general's competence and maturity, which is particularly frustrating when autism is so often viewed as a children's condition. I mean, RFK Jr. just came out and said, no older people are autistic, only affects children. Autism is so often associated with puzzle pieces and primary colors. Now more than ever, this feels dehumanizing, and it feels like reinforcing an uncomfortable power imbalance. Some people actually disagreed with me when I pointed out the music thing last year and said, oh, it's just similar to something like the Great British Bake Off. I think you call it the Great British Baking Show over in the US. For some reason, they had to give it a different name just to confuse us all. It's just soothing and wholesome. It's kind of like The Sims music. I watched a few clips of Bake Off and I can see the similarities. Bake Off / baking show is going for wholesome, maybe even slightly Christmassy vibes. The thing is, it's not necessarily the music, the piece of music itself that is the problem, it's how they use it, it's the context. Bake Off is a show for amateur bakers who are often making mistakes and burning things and accidentally making things that look like penises. From the clips I saw, there were a hell of a lot of innuendos. I felt like I was watching a pantomime or something. There's also a version featuring celebrities who are respected and viewed as competent in other domains. It doesn't feel like punching down in this context for the music to be a bit childlike, even if they do something silly. To be honest, if you use the same music on a baking show that only featured people with dyspraxia, I'm just imagining myself on Bake Off and the absolute mess I would make, basically. But yeah, it'd probably feel pretty harsh and infantilizing too. Love on the Spectrum features disabled people whose condition affects their social skills. They're playing quirky music when the cast trip over words or when they're hyperverbal and may be perceived as talking too much. I don't think laughing at a soggy souffle, is that a thing? I don't know, has quite the same impact on a marginalized group's perceived competence and adulthood. I think Bake Off or Baking Show opt for whimsical music because baking is considered whimsical or wholesome, not because they're trying to imply the people are. So I still agree with past Meg on that one, who is obviously a completely different person. One argument that I think you could make in favour of the music is that it could make the show more accessible for autistic viewers. It's calm, soothing, peaceful, less of a sensory assault. Although there are, of course, many autistic people who enjoy heavy metal. I haven't forgotten about you. But I think there are moments in the show where the music was inoffensive, so it is possible, it can be done. There was a bit of romantic piano and pieces that generally just felt hopeful and optimistic, but not in a childlike way.
I love your personality, your characteristics. Seem we have a lot in common.
So maybe we just need to choose the music and weave it into the edit a little bit more carefully. If I was making the show, avoiding infantilizing the autistic cast would be one of my main concerns, absolutely. I had another issue with the edit last time, that likes and dislikes thing that they do when they introduce a new date. Now, I was also kind of wrong about this. I didn't realize that it was actually inspired by the 2001 French movie, Amélie.
We actually stole that from the French film Amélie. I shouldn't admit to that, but...
what are you doing, Ken? Yeah. You know what? Now that you say it, it does, yeah. Maybe that's why I was like so drawn to it too, because I really love that movie, Amélie, yeah.
But I think when you compare the two side by side, Amélie's narrator is more matter of fact. There's no sickly sweet, speaking through a smile children's presenter sort of voiceover.
Madison is meeting Brandon. He likes kangaroo pouches and massage chairs. He doesn't like wobbly tables or touching fish.
Raphaël Poulain aime arracher de grands morceaux de papier peint, aligner toutes ses chaussures et les cirer avec soin.
I do think Amélie is a cute reference. Many autistic people do relate to that movie, but it'll fly over a lot of viewers' heads for sure. And again, context. I know a lot of people love the likes and dislikes format. It's kind of fun to think of your own. We did it in the comments of the last video. Maybe it's a benign way to get to know information about somebody quickly, and it's a fun form of self-expression for that person. But does it really serve to portray these dates, many if not most of whom are also disabled, as complex adults. Disabled people are often wrongly assumed to have simpler inner worlds and simpler lives. Sometimes that's idealized and we call them innocent or pure. We may see them as unmarred by adulthood, uncomplicated, morally one-dimensional, morally perfect. And you do hear people online refer to the cast members as sweet, cute, wholesome, heartwarming, innocent.
I think you do an amazing job of capturing the joyfulness, the sweet innocence.
But that's all until Dani, again, CEO of her own company with a master's degree, dared to speak openly and directly about sex on the show. As this Redditor says, you can't infantilize Dani and that's why you hate her. And I have seen a ridiculous amount of backlash towards Dani last season, this season as well. There are people in the comments being like, oh, she's my least favorite. As if she won't see it. Like, she has social media, she could see that. Do you not imagine that she has feelings? Like, if you're gonna have favorite and least favorite autistic people, maybe just keep it to yourself. I'm your least favorite autistic person. I don't want to know.
I know I opened up the conversation and I expected some trolling, but sheesh, come on, people, grow up. We are adults.
Oh no, I've had negative response to that whole part of the conversation.
Yes, I did look at some comments, especially like on Reddit. Some people say that I'm not the favorite, or some people say that I just want sex, or some people considered me like a Debbie Downer, but
as Dani points out, it's really important for autistic women to be educated about sex.
Addressing intimacy is crucial because I'm tired of being treated as if I'm not capable of understanding or discussing, like Jennifer said, infantilizing. Let's debunk the myth that only men are interested in sex. Women are too, including those of us on the spectrum.
It's ironic that people take issue with her being blunt about desiring an adult relationship on a show that's supposed to be about adult relationships, but perhaps demonstrates how people do not leave the show seeing autistic people as equals and adults. Speaking of how viewers tend to perceive the cast, there was also this moment on a podcast. Abby tells some dirty jokes, and then one of the hosts asks Abby, why do you find dirty jokes funny? And I just found it a bit odd.
Do you think dirty jokes are more funny than non-dirty jokes?
Dirty jokes are pretty funny.
Why are they funny? Because they almost because it's like, what is that feeling you're feeling when you're telling a dirty joke?
It's pretty funny. Again, you know why dirty jokes are funny. Would you ask a neurotypical person that? I think it's more that you find it surprising that an autistic woman is making dirty jokes. When you think about it, Love on the Spectrum is actually so well placed to combat the infantilization of autistic people. And maybe you could even argue that autistic adults dating being in the top 10 on Netflix is still a huge step forward, despite, the silly music and stuff. And it's great that they made the choice to keep in showing Dani openly talking about sex.
She felt a lot of people were infantilizing them. And she's like, I'm a grown adult woman. I do want an adult relationship. And then she asked Kian if she could talk about that for season 2. And he said, yeah, go for it. Talk about it. So she did. And then she went way the other way.
With a few tweaks in the edit, I think we could make it better, and it could still be a really relaxing, easy watch. But another way the cast are dehumanized and seen as one-dimensional by viewers is being turned into objects of inspiration. Part 3, Inspiration versus Inspiration Porn. That podcast interview with Abby ends with the hosts now alone in the studio discussing how sweet Abby and her partner David are, and how all of the cast of Love on the Spectrum are a shining example of how people should be.
Well, aren't they the sweetest?
They're so sweet. I love them.
What I took from that show, and I would appreciate so much about the entire cast of Love on the Spectrum, they're such a great example of how we should operate in our interpersonal relationships, because they really seem happy.
I mean, I personally see complexity on the show. I wouldn't reduce their experiences to simply happiness. No one is happy all of the time, and autistic people often struggle with mental health conditions, so perhaps especially not autistic people. When I watch the show, I see people having panic attacks, struggling with sensory differences, crying, having dates that didn't go so well. It often looks like it's painful for the cast members to push themselves out of their comfort zones in this way. I'm not sure any cast member is seen as a walking embodiment of happiness more than Tanner. In comments, people will often refer to him as a golden retriever. I mean, this interviewer said that Tanner makes people's souls feel clean, which was kind of a joke because he cleans hotels. That's his job.
And how you're keeping it in tip-top shape, and you're also doing that for everybody watching you. You're making everybody's souls feel very clean, so I think there's a parallel.
I mean, even Tanner's mom talks about how having a disabled child sucks, but eventually someone will be changed by that special child and their purpose will finally make sense.
And see the magic in him. And
Yeah.
like, that this is genuinely exactly the way he was created to be. God had a purpose. It took us a long time to find it.
Amen.
But here it is. And this is why, it's the why.
Right.
You know, because first, I think you would connect too. You spend a lot, I did, a decade questioning, frustrated, sad, angry, a lot of loss. And just like, how am I ever going to make this good?
Yeah.
And I so wish, if I could tell a younger mom anything, I would say, just take a deep breath. I know it's hard. I know it sucks. But just take a deep breath. There is going to be light at the end of the tunnel. And there is a reason somebody is going to be fundamentally changed by this special child.
Right.
You know?
Right.
It just takes a while.
It unfortunately reminds me of the movie The Unbreakable Boy that came out earlier this year. I have a video about that here. I spoke a lot about inspiration porn in that video. This idea that an autistic person exists to change, fix the people around them. They are a magical, otherworldly being. They are so special. They are better than all of us. It's still othering, it's dehumanization, but it's in a fancy coat. Maybe they're actually just living their lives for themselves. Maybe they lived their lives in the first person. Maybe they're not just side characters in someone else's story. This was a comment about Connor on Reddit. If we had more Connors and Georgies in the world, it'd be a better place. Love them, with a heart emoji. Now Connor does seem lovely and Georgie was so kind to him when he was feeling anxious. I think they were a great match. And I understand this person was just trying to be nice. I don't want to be super cynical, but these are human beings, not angels. They will have flaws, like all of us. We honestly don't know very much about them. Talking about an autistic person this way feels like overcompensating. Autistic people don't need to be seen as perfect because that's not true. It's an impossible bar to clear. I mean, clearly Danny didn't measure up in many people's eyes. She's too human. Sometimes she has a little bit of mess. So just being seen as equals would be nice. Autistic people shouldn't need to always be smiling in order to earn acceptance. Inspiration porn is a term coined by the late Stella Young to describe how disabled people are sometimes turned into objects of inspiration, often just for getting on with their lives, just for living their lives. They're seen as extraordinary for doing ordinary things. If neurotypical people are watching the show in order to get the warm and fuzzies, for a sense of like, if these people can do it, I can do it too, with a sense of thank God I'm not this awkward, this makes me feel better about myself, even though I've made social mistakes in the past, at least I'm not this bad, at least I'm not yawning at the dinner table. On the other hand, you could argue that Love on the Spectrum is just inspiring for autistic people watching and their families, but also for people who are just generally socially anxious or shy, people who suffer with anxiety. There'll be people watching who are autistic and have no idea and find the show inspiring. Maybe it gives people the encouragement to get out there, even if they are likely to make social mistakes sometimes, and maybe they won't find their perfect match straight away. But maybe you could even argue that instead of objectifying the cast, it actually humanizes them. I've heard quite a few neurotypical people express how this show has made them realize how hard dating is for everyone, that's kind of a universal experience. It's an equalizer.
The thing that I really thought was great about the show was the humanizing factor of it, but also was just like using this thing, dating, which it's really scary to everybody. And then showing that, you know, people that are on autism spectrum, that it's like, it really kind of makes this equating.
It's like the equalizer, the great equalizer.
Yeah, leveling the playing field. And then it's just, you immediately identify with them. Like, yeah, I've been in that situation where you're just sitting in the corner at a restaurant waiting for someone to come in and you're freaking out about like just having to talk, you know? So
yeah, you think you're wearing your best outfit, you're ready to go.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that first date fear.
Regardless of neurotype, everybody knows that stress and it's not comfortable for anybody. Perhaps it's even a way that neurotypical people can better identify with the social struggles of being autistic and empathize.
You mentioned the panic attack. What I think is so funny is when I went on my first ever date, I had a full-blown panic attack. I had to leave. I had to go home. Look, man, it is scary. Like, I'm not going to sit here and act like it's easy. I understand, man. I absolutely understand.
This will be many people's only exposure to autistic people. The siblings of the cast members have discussed how having an autistic person in their family has made them kinder to strangers, made them less judgmental if someone's doing something that's maybe perceived as a bit strange in public. But a lot of people don't have an autistic person in their household. So if the show can inspire people to be more understanding and tolerant of social and behavioral differences, is, that's great. Honestly, I don't think the inspiration porn thing is the show's fault. I don't think they set out to objectify the cast in this way. They do show the complexity, the ups and downs, the struggles, the hard moments, the rejections, and I think they genuinely do want them to succeed and want them to find partners. I just think it's how some viewers have interpreted the show and how many of us have been conditioned to view disability. Although again, maybe we'd have a few less of the, oh, they're so cute, they're too pure for this world comments if we didn't narrate the show as if we were talking to a toddler.
This series follows people on the autism spectrum.
And speaking of objectifying the cast, did anyone else notice how many foot shots there were this season? Part 4, good representation versus humiliation. Now I feel kind of creepy for mentioning it, but it's not just me. It has been said by many other people online. Many. I noticed 4 very prominent, lingering foot shots. I think some of them could be excused as showing stimming and fidgeting and anxiety, but not all of them. Even if it's not creepy, it's an odd decision because a lot of people don't like feet very much. Feels a bit disrespectful to the cast. Did they give permission for that? But oh whoops, we found somebody infantilizing the cast again in the comments of this post about the feet. I just ended episode 5. It's kind of disgusting because some of these kids have a very limited support system, like Parry or James. Do they have a limited support system? I think most people really love James' parents. They should know they can refuse to those shots. Yeah, let's not say kids. They're not kids. They have absolutely consented to be recorded in this context, but I agree regardless of neurotype, you might not be expecting your bare feet to make it into the final cut. Maybe there are like other ways to show stimming. And as with previous seasons, we have other unflattering, odd shots this time around. Shots of awkward eating, again with the shots of yawning when we know that anxious yawning is a thing, but they don't explain that, they don't provide that information, so we just let the audience assume that the autistic people are just bored or just being rude. The laughing at versus laughing with thing can be a bit of a fine line, but as we discussed earlier, the cast do seem to be pretty happy with how they come across.
I do not feel that the series was downplaying them or mocking them or infantilizing them in any way. No, I certainly do not believe that.
Vanity Fair interviewed Kian. They said Love on the Spectrum feels authentic to the lived experience of the cast members with autism, but never feels exploitative of them. How do you walk that line? And then he responded, the simple answer is that we care for the people we're filming, we like them, and we want what's best for them. That's always a part of everything we do. When you like the people you're filming with, you respect them. You want them to be happy with the product at the end of the day. You don't want them to turn around and feel like you've done them a disservice by telling their story in a certain way. It is a line that you dance. Sometimes there are things that we'll take out that might be really entertaining or really interesting, but we feel doesn't necessarily represent the person in the best way or in the best light. Hopefully we've managed to tell everyone's stories in a way that people are happy with. I mean, the participants themselves are really happy, which is great. They're the most important critics. And apparently some things are left out, just not the foot shots. And these are just the foot shots that we get to see. I feel like we need to examine the raw footage. To be fair, people have said the same thing about Love is Blind. Maybe it's just an intentional thing to show vulnerability, to create a sense of intimacy. Maybe intimacy is the wrong word, I don't know. A casual vibe. The feet are out. Regardless, again, maybe if you paid them, you could better beat those exploitation allegations. I think it's probably a good idea. Again, this has been something that's been consistent throughout the seasons, but there are moments where Kian asks cast members questions about sex that could be seen as invasive or creating a sort of spectacle. They're capitalizing on the audience's curiosity about whether disabled people have sex. And I don't know, on the one hand, maybe you could argue that it's a good thing if the people do know that disabled adults do have sex, that not all autistic people are asexual. I certainly think Dani's done a good job of dismantling that stereotype, and I'm really glad that they included that part of her story and they didn't censor it. I do hope they ask for consent to ask these questions though before the cameras start rolling. Part 5, what's with the parents? Several of the parents seem to be more right-wing and agree with RFK Jr. I recently made a video that was over an hour long unpacking RFK's 30-minute press conference about autism. I wanted to fact check it in a way that I know most people won't have the time to do and find all of the studies that he was talking about. Yeah, basically every word that came out of his mouth was misinformation, but both Tanner's mom and Christine, Abby's mom, have reposted videos from other parents defending RFK on TikTok.
what he said, he was not lying, and he's taking actual parents' words and he put them in his speech. And I'm sorry that you were offended by that.
Tanner and Connor's mum have a podcast together called Talk to Me Sis. Both of Tanner's parents have implied on that podcast that Tanner might be autistic due to vaccines.
So we just had his 2-year-old vaccinations and we put him on an antibiotic. We go home to Illinois for Christmas, and it was shortly thereafter. I don't know if any of that is related. I don't have any idea. I know there's a lot of controversy about those topics. I just know that that's how the timeline went. And it was pretty shortly thereafter that I just started to notice, the first thing I noticed was a definite change in affect.
I don't know where autism came. You know what? I don't know. Nikki has her belief. You guys have a belief. I don't know whether you're born with it. I don't know whether it comes from a vaccine or something. I don't really know the answer to that, and I've never really
pondered it
because there, 100 people have 50 different answers.
One thing that has just blown my mind, and I truly don't care, but since we're going there, we're going to go there. I have been ripped on hugely for saying in episode 2 that Tanner's symptoms came on after his 2-year-old vaccinations. I did not say ever, I have never said that that's why he has autism, but they did. I will always wonder. I don't understand how any thinking person can't wonder about, the things and the timeline and the way things present and the way things happen. I'm a former nurse. You can't tell me not to wonder and not to remember.
Yeah, I mean, you just wonder, and then you wonder, did I do the right thing or what happened?
Right.
And you're following other people's advice. I don't really have an opinion on the vaccines myself.
I don't either.
I always say, and people hate me, what kind of autism do you have? And when I say that, what I mean to say is, because some people have regressive autism. That's the term I've heard used, meaning parents got the shots, they have video footage of the kids like laughing and they're interacting, and then they stop. That to me is a very specific reaction, timing, a personality. I don't know. We did not have that. We just had atypical development from day one.
Christine, Abby, and David also appeared on the Impulsive podcast. If you didn't know, this is Logan Paul's podcast. The guy who's kind of famous for just vlogging a dead body and is a Trump supporter. Trump has also been a guest on the same podcast. The controversial charity Autism Speaks, even they spoke out about RFK, by the way, so it's bad. But Autism Speaks was mentioned numerous times on the show by cast members as well, which always feels like a bit of a jump scare. It feels like we might be favoring one side of the political spectrum here, probably accidentally. James is apparently a feminist warrior over on social media, and both him and his new girlfriend spoke out against RFK.
I am not particularly pleased about Mr. Kenny's comments because they clearly were made from a position of extreme ignorance.
Danny and Danny's aunt are also amazing.
After all these more than 30 years of research and everything, it's somebody like RFK. He has no history. He has nothing to show us that he knows what he's doing.
Word choice was very
and
upsetting.
I know some people will argue that it's nitpicking and we shouldn't be making this political.
What hurts my heart is I don't want anyone to polarize Love on the Spectrum. It's such a good show.
It's such a good show with such a great message.
I appreciate that many people just want to turn off their brain sometimes and watch something light. And that is your right. That is your right. But for many of us, it is concerning. Kian himself seems to want to stay pretty apolitical. In response to the cast members speaking out about RFK, he said, "Good for them for speaking up. Obviously, these comments are hurtful to some people. I think it's great that people are turning to the cast from the series to be those voices of people who experience this and who have the life experience to be able to speak on these things." So he's kind of saying, I don't feel like it's my place to speak on these issues, and hurtful to some people. Some people. All right, Kian. I guess we don't really know where he stands. In conclusion, I don't know if I would watch another season. I do really like the cast, and that has always been the biggest pull for me. I think Kian absolutely deserved that award for best casting, or, maybe the cast deserved some money. But I don't know, it's hard for things not to be tainted by the dreaded politics in the year 2025. Have you seen this season? Do you think it's an overall net good for the community? It's difficult to know. Impossible to measure, pretty much. I don't know if it's always putting the right people in the spotlight, unfortunately, and whether that undoes the strides in representation, possibly. possibly. If you missed the RFK Jr. video and you want to know everything wrong with what he said, unpacked in excruciating detail, I'll leave that video linked on screen and below. If you want another video about autistic representation, instead I made this one about the unbreakable boy. I go into a little more detail on the whole Inspriation porn situation. That movie was based on a real autistic person, and unfortunately there was some more nonsense from parents there. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more from me, you can support me and my little team over on Patreon. I do 2 exclusive videos a month over there, and also all tiers get access to the Discord server where you can chat to other autistic people who don't have to be autistic to join. You can get the exclusive videos and the Discord access on the lowest tier, which is $4. And if you want to try the paired app, you can click my link below to get a 7-day free trial so you can maintain and deepen your connection with your partner. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in my next video very soon.